First things first, I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. Sorry, it was an extended Nick.
No problem at all. I forget your name all the time.
We are not surprised by that in the least. We are back in business. We are good to go.
We are. Good to see you. Good morning.
Yeah, how's everybody doing? Good?
Very good.
Great.
Very good. Got a lot going on. Feel like we can finally let the combine sink in. Had a good night of basketball. Ton to talk about.
For the first time, I looked to see how many games are left in the NBA schedule. There are actually not that many games left.
No. Less than 20 for most teams.
So when I ask you if you're worried about the Cavs, it might actually mean something today.
Exactly,
but I won't ask you today. Hey, here's how you know Nick Wright is in my head at all times.
Oh, that's great.
Someone at the gym yesterday was throwing shade on the Cavs, and I literally interrupted with, oh, just wait till Larry Nance Jr. breaks out. Couple things.
How do you throw some shade,
I throw some shade. Couple things. One, I had a great workout. Not that important yesterday. Two, Larry Nance Jr. did break out. First start for the Cavs, scoring 22 points, grabbing 15 rebounds as Cleveland blows out Detroit. Cavs snap a two-game slide with the win. And Cris Carter, I'm going to start with you. What was your biggest takeaway from Cleveland's win last night over Detroit?
It's very easy to see how much more athletic Cleveland is with Nance in the lineup. But the thing that you don't think Cleveland is ever going to beat teams in the paint. With Nance playing the 5, LeBron playing the 4, they have Drummond and Blake Griffin going against them. Two all-stars. So LeBron, it was nice to hear that going into the game, he had made a pact with Nance. We're going to negate their ability to dominate a game inside with Drummond and Blake Griffin. So with LeBron at the 4 and with Nance at the 5, their ability to get more paint points. And it's not just based on how many points they get in the paint, but their ability to make shots in the paint. It spreads the court to make the three-point line more open. So their ability to dominate in the paint versus Detroit, I think, was one of the great signs that we're able to see with Cleveland having Nance in the lineup. It's a small thing, but if you're able to get that many points in the paint, I think they had 40 last night, compared to Detroit's 26 or 28. That difference right there, it makes the court expanded. And when you can out-rebound teams, which typically they're not going to be able to do without Kevin Love being in the lineup as a great rebounder. So the physical presence of Nance and LeBron at the 5 and 4 inside the paint and the rebounding, I thought made a huge difference in how Cleveland looked last night.
To out-rebound Detroit, Detroit's got the best rebounder in basketball. Andre Drummond, that's what he's known for. This is the first time all year, and I believe the first time in years, Andre Drummond has played at least 30 minutes and been held to single-digit rebounds. You touched on it, Cris. The Cavs, people are going to point to Nance's big offensive night, the fact that he was 22 and 15, which is extraordinary. I want to look at the other side of the ball. The Cavs' defense was extraordinary after the first quarter, and they allowed Detroit to make 22 two-point baskets. Think about that. Only 22 shots inside of the three-point arc was made by Detroit all game. It's not because they were living at the three-point line. It's not because they were living at the free-throw line. It's because that defense all of a sudden, with a regular season-wise engaged LeBron and with Larry Nance Jr., just so active, going after rebounds, going after deflections, it looked like a different Cavs team. And it offered up an intriguing option for them, potentially, not to get too far ahead of ourselves. But yesterday you were talking about can they compete with the Warriors, and last week we talked about LeBron potentially going to Philadelphia, and why it could be interesting is having so many big people of Ben Simmons and LeBron and Joel Embiid. If Larry Nance can continue to hit that 15 to 17-foot jump shot that Ty Lue said I did not know he had when we brought him over.
And I think that's very interesting that they're finding things in the players that they traded for
that they didn't know about.
They didn't know about,
yeah.
But it's really huge because if you're going to get in those matchups with those teams in the West in particular, you're going to need that intermediate jump shot that Nance provided for them last night.
And you're going to need your 5 position to be an offensive threat. And he is not Tristan Thompson is only an offensive threat rolling to the rim. Only on high pick and roll, LeBron throw you an alley-oop, JR throw you an alley-oop. If Larry Nance is just a passable threat, similar to the way David West is for the Warriors from 15 feet. Now, West is great at that shot. Nance isn't going to be that good.
Right.
But you have the option of playing a huge lineup, of having a front line of LeBron, Love, Nance. If that lineup doesn't kill you offensively, that lineup can be very intriguing against the smaller Golden State Warriors. So I went into this game saying on Twitter all weekend, I want to see more minutes of Larry Nance Jr. on the court with LeBron. Here's one note for you. Since the new players have arrived, take all the minutes the Cavs have played, they are plus 53 with any lineup where it's LeBron and Nance on the court. They are minus 15 in every other lineup. That means lineups including LeBron. But if LeBron and Nance on the court, this team is plus 53. Any other lineup they put out there, they're minus 15. It's a very small sample size. But last night did what my head was telling me it could, which was give the Cavs a more athletic, interesting front line.
Well, Nance was in there because Tristan's out hurt right now. And it looked great. Now you add this other wrinkle of maybe Kevin Love coming back. Would you start Nance if they continue on with this? Does that provide some sort of confusion? When
I can guarantee you the Cleveland coaching staff, when they were watching the game, they were like, this is something that we can get used to. And it's just a small sample size now. But these last 20 games, I look for Nance to play more. It's kind of... The irony to it is, in Tristan getting hurt, because we're like, man, we need to get more time together. In Tristan getting hurt, Nance is going to get some minutes that they weren't going to see, that makes them more prepared now for the playoffs. So I believe that this injury to Tristan, it helps out the Cavs. Now, they do need to get Love back because then you get more of a real feel for what it's going to be like in the playoffs. But last night had to be very, very encouraging for the staff as far as this is another lineup that they can go to. Also, the backup, the guy you always mess with, the throw-in in the trade.
Ante Zizic.
Zizic.
The big Z is what they were calling him on the broadcast because his teammates call him that. Cavs fans do not like anyone being called Big Z other than Zdrunas Ilgauskas, but Ante Zizic.
Right, but to see his development going down to the G League, now with him backing up Nance, you saw even a big guy. LeBron loves big guys. He hasn't been able to get too many of them, so having him as a backup playing quality minutes too, I believe will help them this last stretch of games.
I think Larry Nance can take Tristan Thompson's starting spot. I think by the time, listen, they're starting on a 5-game road trip. Tristan is not going to play at all on this road trip. Larry Nance doesn't have to give you 22 and 15 every night, obviously.
No.
But if he keeps up that energy, that defense, and some of the offense, he can take that starting spot from Tristan, which I would hope, CC, might give you a slightly rejuvenated Tristan Thompson, because Tristan Thompson's the whole reason he's in the league is effort plays, is the fact that he has been the guy that keeps balls alive on offensive and defensive rebounds. That has been gone all year long. Maybe seeing Larry Nance, a younger, more athletic version than him doing that, can get you a better Tristan when he does play.
Yeah, I think the real number for Larry Nance is probably around 12 and 10.
Yes.
If he can get you 12 points, he's going to get you double digits in rebound. But his ability to provide energy and be more athletic. What we didn't get in Kevin Love in the trade, we always talk about, man, Kevin Love's not as athletic. But if you get Kevin Love back healthy, playing at his natural 4, you move LeBron to the 3, and you get the energy and athleticism at Nance at the 5, I believe they can battle the teams in the West. You mentioned Golden State, but also Capella and what he brings for Houston. I believe it's a better matchup for the Cavs. Now we got to get these last 20 games, and they got to get to the finals. But a healthy Nance and a healthy Love with LeBron, I believe it's a better Cavs team than we've seen.
Go ahead, Jenna.
It's okay.
No, it's very hard to blow a team out when your starting backcourt goes 1 for 8 from the field. When you get nothing from your starting backcourt. JR had one play the whole game, the alley-oop to Nance, where it looked like he was throwing it like a bowl of soup, like a little underhand toss. And then and George Hill did nothing.
And your guy, JR, he hasn't had a point in the first half in 2 games now.
Right. He was exactly right. He was good. Post-suspension, he came out firing in the second half and was good there. But to have a game where LeBron doesn't have to play in the 4th, and despite the fact that your starting backcourt gives you nothing, it's very rare in this league.
Yeah, I need to have someone look up the numbers. When was the last time Cleveland in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quarter gave up 21, 21, and 20? Like, regardless of what they were doing offensively, if they play defense like that, they're going to be in every game.
All right. Welcome back to First Things First. Oh, look who's is here. We just realized.
Hey,
Sitting down, hanging out.
What's up, guys?
Have you been
See
here
you,
the whole
brother.
show? Yeah, you weren't here.
hiding.
The
You were
Cavs knew
listening.
you were coming.
Yes, they did.
So they didn't give
You're
up.
gonna have to
One,
write
they didn't
a
give
new
up
column.
130
They did
last
that. You know,
night.
if I was
They normally-
hoping they were going to play like
like the first quarter.
Yeah, no, play like the Bulls. and
Real
give up.
quick, because I know we're going to talk about the West, but Mannix is at the big boxing match this weekend,
Yes.
right? Deontay
Yes.
Wilder, who has an amazing story. It was a great fight on
Yes.
Showtime. Mannix is there. He's a boxing expert in his off time. And he, mid-fight, I'm sure checks his phone, has not watched a second of the Cavs game, sees they lost, and he's like, hey, guys, if you missed my column last week, trash it.
If you missed it, conference wide open, guys. Conference wide open. Nobody you can believe in there.
I know someone else.
Never miss an opportunity.
I know someone else has those tweets stored up too. And then he fires them off.
I favorite his tweets when he starts like the LeBron love gets a little bit too excessive.
Enough. We're talking about the West.
We are going to
Mannix.
talk out west on the other side. The top two teams out there, the Rockets, the Warriors, James Harden, Chris Paul, and Houston on a roll. Winners of 15 straight games, but Golden State not letting them run away with anything. Katie, Steph, and company, winners of 8 of their last 9 games. So as it stands, Houston leads the West by the narrowest of narrow margins. Just a half game over the Warriors. Chris Mannix, are the Rockets set up to knock off the Warriors this season? And are they the only team primed to do that?
Look, we should point out, too, that the Warriors, since the All-Star break, are undefeated. Like, they, you know, last time I was on here, I think we talked about how, you know, this team could flip a switch and just turn it on. But one thing about the Rockets that's going to separate them from the Warriors, and I talked to someone within their organization just this week, but it was, we're hungry. Like, this team is as hungry as that person has seen the Rockets in recent years. And if you're looking for some kind of separation between the Rockets and the Warriors, it's that hunger. Right now, Golden State, they believe in themselves. They're a great team. But are they as hungry as Houston? I don't think so. You know, this is going to be their 4th year, potentially, going to the finals, going for another championship. This Rockets team has James Harden, who still remembers the San Antonio series from last year. They've got Chris Paul, who hasn't been out of the second round of the playoffs. These guys are in their prime type players who recognize the potential greatness of this team. They're a top 10 defense for the first time in a very long time. So I think they do have a real chance to knock them off.
And the Rockets, I'm sure, right now value the 1 seed more than Golden State
Yes.
does. Even though Golden State's had the 1 seed every year, I think it's important to them. I'm in the minority in saying I think it would be important to them, not that they think it's important, I should say. I'm in the minority there. I think people feel like Golden State, wherever they're at in the bracket, they're going to be the favorites. Houston, I think, looks at that as a line of demarcation. Like, okay, we beat you in the season series, which they already did.
Yep.
We could get the 1 seed. Like, those are different things that matter to them. And you mentioned Harden. Harden is going to win the MVP this year. He would pass a polygraph right now saying, yeah, it should be my 3rd in the last 4 years, actually. Like, they do have a guy who walks on the court with Golden State and says, guess who's got the best player? We do, because it's me. Because I know he feels like I've been the best player in this league for the last 4 years. And so 2 second-place MVP finishes, going to win this year.
You said that the Rockets are hungry. Is it that they're hungry, or is it that Golden State they've done it? They know how to pace themselves a little better. They don't have to be hungry every single night. They have to be hungry when it's time to be hungry.
I think there certainly could be truth to that. I think Golden State has had, at times, a rough time getting up for these midseason games, but you combine the Rockets' hunger with the talent that they have on that roster, particularly on the defensive side of the ball now. I mean, guys like Clint Capella, their record with Clint Capella, James Harden, and Chris Paul, 32-1 this season with those 3 guys in the lineup. That screams something. And look, we can't dismiss the regular season results, because last year, San Antonio, I think they beat them a couple of times during the regular season. Now, the Spurs wound up getting swept in the conference finals, but that was entirely because Kawhi Leonard missed that series. Kawhi Leonard, if he had played that whole series, I think San Antonio could have won that series. And the Rockets, the way they've played Golden State this season, we can't just sit back and say, well, it's Golden State sort of pacing themselves, biding their time. This Rockets team is for real. If Golden State didn't exist, the Rockets would be Golden State. The Rockets would be the boogeyman that everybody is terrified of.
And I think if Golden State wasn't there, I think that we'd see some complacency on Houston's side, because a sense of accomplishment, like, you can't take that for granted. Golden State has that. They've earned that. Now, I just believe the second half of the season, which I did predict, they are undefeated. I believe they will be focused, because you're only talking about 20 to 25 games. And I believe that the home court, it is It's in Houston's advantage to have it, but Golden State, when you have home court advantage, Golden State is saying, can we win one of the first 2 games there? They're like, of course we can. So if you're able to do that, then the home court is able to switch back. Now, my thing is, what if Houston has home court and Golden State wins one of those first 2 games? Is Houston mentally prepared now to be able to go back to Golden State and be able to flip it back? So I just believe the home court is very, very important to Houston. More important than it is than Golden State, but I believe down the stretch, Golden State will be just as motivated as we've seen the last 3 years.
And I know that you guys both mentioned they're undefeated since the All-Star break are the Warriors. Obviously, the Rockets are on a 15-game winning streak, Warriors on a 5. But these games, so Saturday night, while you were at the fight, actually, Golden State's playing Atlanta, one of the worst teams in the league. Atlanta was begging to get blown out, and Golden State just wouldn't do it. But they're up 11 with 2.5 minutes. I'm like, okay, it's going to be game over. And even in that, you just need to focus for 90 seconds. And then all of a sudden, it's Atlanta ball down 3 with 20 seconds left, chance to force overtime. And each game does matter if you're going for the 1 seed. Now, Iguodala made a great play, got a steal and a dunk. While that was going on, Houston was in the midst of a spectacular final moments comeback against a Celtics team that knows, that was playing as if this is as big of a game as we'll play in all year.
Future finals team.
Oh, yeah, exactly right, of course. And so in this winning streak, they're beating teams by an average of 14 points per 100 possessions. They are blowing people out.
I think they've only had a handful of games that have been decided by 3 points or less. They have not had to play those tough games. And that's to their credit. I mean, look, you're right, Chris, about what happens when they lose to a champion in the conference final. This is not a team that's had to dig deep like that. Yes, James Harden has been in the finals, but he was one of the supporting players of that team. We mentioned Chris Paul, never been in that situation.
And even in that final, didn't have a great final.
Right. A kid, though. What was he, 20, 21 years old? I mean, going up against...
It's in the memory bank, though.
Yeah. But what's also in the memory bank here is that's a Rockets team that I think hears everything. They hear all the outside noise. They hear that
doubt.
James Harden hears.
And I think that starts from management.
Yeah.
And Del Morey says, "Listen, we're
obsessed with
Golden State. It goes through the franchise. Now, sometimes people look at it as a benefit, but when you get in tough situations like one loss in a series, where does that put their psyche?"
Well, and one last point, as far as when we talk about the 1 versus the 2 seed, the first round matchup as well. Either of these teams are going to be heavily favored in the first round. But if you're the 1 seed, you're probably getting Denver or the Clippers in the first round. If you're the 2 seed, it's likely either Minnesota or Oklahoma City. Minnesota with Jimmy Butler back. Oklahoma City with all that talent. It just makes your entire path at least slightly more difficult along the way.
And potentially a second-round matchup with Portland, which I don't think anybody wants.
They're high on Portland.
Blazers right now playing good ball.
And finally, some interesting news out of the NBA. The league is reportedly considering getting rid of the one-and-done rule. The NBA is also looking to get involved with elite players while they are still in high school. CC, you think this is a good idea?
Well, if they get rid of the one and done, what's going to be the rule? What are they going to do? They're going to make it like football, where you have to stay in there 3 years, or they're going to have it 1 year? What's going to be the concrete rule? It's going to be you can go straight from high school.
I believe so.
I don't believe that helps the high school player. I know it doesn't help college basketball. So for me, I like them to have the option. I like one and done at least, because I believe more kids, they give up on their education because they think that they're a pro. And I think that in the NFL, it's a little bit better because of a maturity standpoint, and you can't put a 19-year-old on the field with professional football players. Basketball, as a 16-year-old, you can play next to LeBron James. Now, there's going to be a physical difference, but you can see the talent in the comparison. I like one and done at least. I don't believe high school players are ready to come from high school to play, and I believe that they're sacrificing, a lot of them, say 90% of them are sacrificing an education that is free for what? For a dream that they can eventually pursue that dream. It's hard to go back and get a scholarship, afterwards, after you've already tried to enter the NBA and then go back and get your education.
I don't want to speak for you, but tell me, if I'm talking to you enough about this, you would prefer some hybrid of what they have with baseball. Basically where you can come straight out of high school, but if you go to college, you have to stay at least 2 years. With baseball, it's 3. But the 2 year, if you go to college, stay at least 2. That's what you would prefer.
Well, this is the thing, because the one and done, it's hurt college basketball, but it's hurt a lot of kids. because kids think that they can go from high school 1 year and then go into the pro. They're not good enough. Like, we see the Kobe's. We've seen the big kid in Kevin Garnett. Like, all these things, but, man, these things are rare. LeBron is rare, and I just believe that the kids are too concerned about going to the NBA compared to about the number one worry should be trying to get some education, and 1 year in college is better than none. And also their development as human beings and as a skilled athlete.
So, Nick, explain why this is even on the table then. Why would they even want to get rid of it?
Because it's right now, it's almost the worst of both worlds. You've got guys 1 foot in college, 1 foot out. You've got obviously some players. There are some players who are ready, who are going to college only because they're forced. And what the NBA is discussing, and I give Adam Silver an enormous amount of credit for being proactive about this, along with Michelle Roberts, head of the NBA Players Association, pardon me, in talking to the elite of the elite and talking to them about their nutrition, about their training, and potentially opening up the G League as a more lucrative option where they could make upwards of $100,000 for players who, by the way, families really need it, but they're not yet ready for the NBA. And so the fact that they are having these types of discussions, because right now, I know our pal Doug Gottlieb said last week, oh, they can go to the G League. Make $26,000 a year. Like, that is not sustainable, especially when, if you have a family in poverty, if you have a mom who's helped you along the way, a brother or a sister. So trying to be able to point out the DeAndre Aytons, the guys like that are going to be no doubt NBA players, and saying, hey, what makes more sense to you? To go to Arizona for a year, or to get involved with a team, get involved with the NBA, even if that first year you're playing in the G League, making some money? I don't have the exact solution to one and done versus two and done.
I prefer for kids going to college. I prefer that because I know what they're missing. Most of these guys are not long-term NBA players, and I believe that we're ruining kids' career more so than we're enhancing other people's opportunity. And I don't care if they pay you $200 in the G League. When you're poor and you're broke in your family, $200,000 does not change your life. So let's not say, oh, they can go to the G League. They can get money to help out their family. That is not game-changing money. Get your education and also develop your game, which you might have the opportunity to warrant an NBA contract.
The whole skipping out on the education thing stresses me out. You know, from my perspective, sitting over here, already having the job. New topic. This one is called former UCLA quarterback Josh Rosen. Easy to pro and con your way here. Cons, well, he's outspoken. He's too smart for the game. He wants football but doesn't need football. He doesn't play well with others in the sandbox. But his pros, well, he's a pretty outstanding quarterback. Rosen addressed his perceived character issues at the Combine over the weekend.
I'm not going to present a fake image of myself. Like some advice to someone with maybe issues in the past, or have these pre-rehearsed questions on, I'm sorry, I won't ever do that again. I think that you have to be yourself, you have to be authentic, and you have to show that you've learned and grown over the years. You have to own your mistakes. And I think that that's what I'm trying to show. I'm trying to show who I really am, not who I'm trying to be, because I want them to draft me, not who I don't want them to draft someone they think they're getting and then not to get that guy. So I think that's also what your teammates want, is your teammates don't want a fake shell of yourself. Teammates want you to be you every single day so that you're that reliable rock that they can count on.
It's always refreshing to hear what you believe to be a true answer, obviously, at the Combine there. Nick, do you have concerns with Rosen with off-the-field issues?
No, none. I think that what he said right there is spot on. I am who I am. I'm not going to present a false version of me to help my draft stock, because then whatever team drafts me, I am there for 5 years minimum. If I'm a good player at quarterback, I'm there for the rest of my career, and you draft me under false pretenses. So it's like dating. I mean, to a degree, like if you really, really like someone, do you want them to fall in love with someone you're not? Or do you want to see if they will fall in love with who you actually are? You can present the best version of yourself, but still an honest version of yourself. The idea that Josh Rosen is being graded down by these anonymous scouts because he's smart, because he's interested in politics, because his family came from money, to me is all patently absurd. And it is, to be honest with you, the part of the NFL draft process that I like the absolute least, because it strikes me as total nonsense.
I just think some of these stories are made up. I take exception to even the question, his character issues. What has he done to have bad character? Like, anytime we bring up character, someone had to do something. Josh, he hasn't done anything. I mean, he's made his opinion known, but that's not character issue. That's just someone who's been outspoken. Now, to me, I believe that you're wrong as far as the interview process and the dating process. You're not dating anyone who's showing you their real self. Everyone's camouflage. Oh, when you meet someone, you're not meeting that real person. And this guy's 21 years old. When you were 21 years old, man, you didn't know who you were. Like, so when you're trying to get a job interview, you are presenting the best version of yourself that fits into whatever job you're applying for. So I don't even believe he knows who he is yet. I know he doesn't understand what an NFL locker room is, but I believe he will be a leader in the NFL. I don't believe he has any character issues. But as far as playing the game, that's life. That's what people do. When you go to a job interview, the reason why you don't wear shorts, which you might be more comfortable, because you're trying to sell something, all right?
You can put on the best version of yourself, but still be yourself. And the reason...
At 21, how many people know who they really, really are?
Well, you know who you are at 21. Like, you know who you are in that moment, and they're not drafting Josh Rosen at 32. So whoever he is,
I'm not
21,
disputing if he should be drafted or not.
No, I know you're not. But the reason that character issues was brought up in the question is from Peter King's column this week, where it said scouts have questions about, and I quote, Josh Rosen's character, and they brought up things like that he's politically involved, that he seems to be anti-Trump, things like this that have nothing to do with football.
Well, some of the things were that. This is just what's reported, that he's a little selfish sometimes in the locker room, that he decides to turn it on when he wants to turn it on. And
those are things, those aren't character, those are who he is as an athlete and who he is as a person. My biggest concern is when he gets hit, he falls apart.
So that's what I was going to ask you.
All right, that's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the characters who hit him. All right? When he gets hit in the NFL, he don't seem to get up like the other guys do. That's my biggest concern. Can his body take the pounding that he's going to take? And he's a rich kid. It's nice to come into the league and get rich, but it's hard to be in the league and you're already rich. You don't have to have football. So for me, as you start talking about these things he has interest in, as he gets hit, does he really want to pay the price like other guys have done? That, to me, is the number one question.
All right, the question about his durability is a totally fair one, but I want to ask you more about this money thing. Because I understand why having money might make a high school athlete less likely to work hard, might make a college athlete less likely to work hard. But all of these, Josh Rosen's going to be a top 10 pick. Sam Darnold's going to be a top 10 pick. There will probably be another quarterback that's top 10 pick. The moment you become a top 10 pick, they're all rich. They all have $15+ million guaranteed. So why would the money Rosen's family has have any impact on his ability to succeed as a pro when all those guys...
It's human nature. When you don't have to do something. It's just like my kids. Your kids. Your kids aren't growing up like you. They don't have to do the things that we did. So when that's not... it's not forced on them, or they don't have to do it. They actually have other options. They've also been raised at a kitchen table where there's different expectations, emotionally, financially, politics. So there's different things that are going on in their life. They have different options, and they see other avenues to being rich than to being a pro athlete.
I totally agree with you, which is why I might be worried about him prior to this moment. But once he gets drafted, they're all rich.
This is what I've known. I have seen guys come into the league like him, and they don't have the stomach for the game. All right? There's not a lot of people who can sit back in the pocket and be battered on a regular basis, and let alone if they were rich. We got a bunch of poor guys. I've talked to them. But this is just my experience in the league with kids who have came in and their parents had some type of influence, or they had some type of wealth. To me, it's totally different. Now, it's just based on my 30 to 40 years of experience of playing with guys and seeing guys, and also hearing people's stories. I have seen guys in training camp show up and turn their pads in. Been like, wow, this is the greatest opportunity of your life. I don't need this. I don't have to do it. So in seeing people quit the game who had parents who were rich, I've seen it. I ain't seen no poor kids quit because they ain't had nothing to go to.
Last season, the Steelers franchise tagged Le'Veon Bell. Then he skipped camp. Then social media jumped all over him. Then he finally showed up and played a great season. So this year, the Steelers want to franchise him again, obviously. In a quote to ESPN.com, Bell said, "We are not coming to a number we both agree on. They are too low, or I guess they feel I'm too high. I'm playing for strictly my value to the team. That's what I'm asking. I don't think I should settle for anything less than what I am valued at." What do you think, CC? Would franchising Bell be a good move for the Steelers?
I thought all along they were going to franchise him. I didn't think he would get the $14.5 or $15 million, given the dollars they already have allocated to Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown as a wide receiver, the highest paid wide receiver. So I thought that they would franchise him. I didn't think he would compromise, so I thought we would be at this. When you look at the durability or the lack of durability of running backs in the NFL, it would be hard to sign a running back to a long-term contract. If you had the ability to franchise him, like this is the best case scenario for a franchise like Pittsburgh. So you're able to get him on a one-year deal for 2 years. He's one of the best players in the league. They're going to pay him about $27 million over those 2 years. And the risk of signing a running back who, how many more years can he do this? Like, you have to put that in question. Running backs in the National Football League, as far as the players who stay in their prime, running backs stay in their prime longer. They have shorter careers. So signing him to a 5-year deal at $75 million, at $15 million a year, that wouldn't be the best thing for the Steelers franchise. So this is what I've expected all along, because I didn't think that he would compromise. If he wants to take less money, that's what running backs would have to do to get a long-term contract, given the nature of the position and the nature of the finances that are in the National Football League right now.
This is, however, while I agree with a lot of what you're saying, this is not ideal for either party, because for L. Bell, he gets no security beyond this year for a position, like you said. It's a fungible position for a lot of teams. It is a position where you see players go from top of the league to, wait, what happened to him, a la what we saw with DeMarco Murray. Now, he did have a bit of a resurgence a couple years later. And it is a position that there is not a lot of guys in the league making huge money at. The biggest contract any running back has is Devontae Freeman, 5 years, $41 million. Yep. With $22 million guaranteed. The second biggest is LaShawn McCoy, 5 years, $40 million, with $18 million guaranteed. So that's why it's not.
So the highest paid guys are making about $8 million right now.
Exactly.
He wants almost double that to play with Pittsburgh.
He wants basically $15 million a year. He's going to get nearly $15 million this year, but it's on a one-year deal. He wants it for a few years guaranteed. So, but the reason it's not ideal for Pittsburgh either is if he does have another great year, if he does stay healthy, what franchising him this year guarantees is they can't franchise him next year. You're allowed to, but they never would. You never franchise a guy 3 years in a row. It gets too expensive. And then all of a sudden, your triple threat of Bell, Brown, Big Ben goes away, because you wouldn't think Le'Veon Bell is going to be in any position where he gives Pittsburgh some type of hometown discount, not after for 2 consecutive years he doesn't get the deal that he wants. I understand both entities' position here. L. Bell wants long-term security paid at the very top of the market, resetting the market, and the Steelers look at the history of the position and look at the fact, man, this guy had 400 carries last year, or 400 touches last year, pardon me. The history of guys that high of a workload, typically their production dips. So I understand why Pittsburgh would do this, and I understand why L. Bell would hold the line, but he's taking a risk, and they're taking a risk as well.
There's also a risk that if you look ahead like you were doing, that both Brown and Roethlisberger stay healthy and he puts together L. Bell a fantastic season, that's a lot that has to happen for the Steelers to come out sort of in the negative in this. Obviously, it seems like they're making the right choice. You're not a big fan of the franchise tag in general. I'm
not a big fan of the franchise tag in general just because I think it restricts, it obviously restricts movement of players. But I just think as a fan, I think free agency's fun. I think when you could say star players in the NFL, star quarterbacks, for example. One of the reasons we all knew Andrew Luck was going to re-sign with Indy before the injuries was because he was never going to actually be a free agent because of the franchise tag. So I'm not a huge fan of it as far as the way it restricts player movement. I understand why the Steelers would use it this way on him, and I understand why L. Bell wouldn't like it.
Yeah, the franchise tag, it's been good for football. For one reason why. People look at the top salaries. If you're getting franchise, you're getting the average of the top 5 salaries at your position. So it still keeps the number high. The problem with L. Bell is the position that he plays. There's no one making $10 million. So unless he rushed for 2,000 yards 3 years in a row, he can't justify the payment of getting $15 million. Oh, I want to be paid outside my position. I want to be paid like a wide receiver. You're not a wide receiver. Jimmy Graham tried to do the same thing a number of years ago in New Orleans. I want to be paid as a wide receiver because they utilize me as a wide receiver. But you're a tight end. You line up at tight end. When they say the starting lineup, you're a running back, L. Bell. Jimmy Graham was a tight end. So they're not going to acquiesce to your demands and pay you like a wide receiver when you are a running back. So I think it's good for football. It's good for fans because it protects a team from losing their 1 or 2 star players. They have the ability, even though we have free agency, to retain them. So from a fandom standpoint, if you're a fan of a football team or a fan of a player, the likelihood of him continuing his career with your favorite team are greater now since they instituted the franchise tag rules.
Right now, the running back position, the only spots that franchise tag number significantly lower than the running back spot are tight end and specialist, kicker, punter. Like, that's it. Every single spot on the defense, D-line, linebacker, corner, safety, is paid equal to or greater than the running back position. Every spot on the offense other than the tight end. Now, I don't know where you feel in this. I think that's going to change. I think as we have guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, those players hit their second contracts, the franchise tag number will catch up to running back all of a sudden being back in vogue in the league. Le'Veon Bell, if he gets another deal after this, could help change that
I believe
as well.
there will be a couple players that will get that long-term contract, but it will not change running backs as far as, do we expect running backs to get paid $15 million? No. They're still going to be around $13 to $10 million at best. Most of them will be under the $10 million, and I believe that will continue because Ezekiel Elliott, he's 3 years from getting a contract. Todd Gurley, he's another 2 years from getting a contract. So what type of productivity will they have in those years? Based on history, those numbers will come back and they will get injured or hurt.
The other thing that this reminded me of is what a wasted, squandered opportunity this past season was for Pittsburgh.
Oh.
Because because they...
Also, if you win, you can have more demands.
Sure.
Since L. Bell, since Antonio, and Big Ben have been together, what have they won? They have nothing but disappointment in the playoffs, in the regular season. So when you go in there, when you haven't won a championship, you haven't defeated New England, like you aren't the top team in the AFC, it's hard to reach those contract demands.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former NFL head coach Eric Mangini.
What up, Coach? Good to see you,
Nice to see you.
Good morning.
I try to be a part of what Nick is interested in, what Cece's interested in, and lately we've been talking about video games. And for 5 seconds, I leaned over. I was like, maybe I could be a part of this conversation. I was out.
No, it's just we both have sons who play a game called Fortnite. And
It's your
Coach has
kids.
started to play Fortnite a little bit. He's recommending I play it.
Well, I'm not in my basement.
Coach, yeah, and they put me in this. I haven't played a video game in 35 years.
No, me too.
My son beat me like 50-something. Well, I quit in the third quarter in Madden. He had me like 50-something. He said, Dad, I thought you know how to play. I know how to play real football. So I haven't played. He retired me 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I love when I get clowned by him, too. Like, they don't teach me exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
And then they clown me the whole game. They're like,
Right, all the buttons you push.
Okay, well, that's
I'm
what
working
we're
on it,
talking
though.
Let's talk about some non-gaming related. Ever since Nick Foles won the Super Bowl, he's been on the hypothetical, also the hypothetical trade block. The Eagles haven't had much of a break since their big win. Stop. They've already started to receive offers for their backup quarterback. However, the price is kind of high. According to reports, the Eagles are looking for something more than the first and fourth rounders that they acquired from the Vikings. Remember, for that Sam Bradford trade. Coach, would you consider trading Foles if you were running the show with the Philadelphia Eagles?
well, hypothetically speaking.
Okay, I got it. All that game.
Did you write that?
All that game.
Hypothetically speaking.
I got it.
So hoping he would do that. I was like, man, come on, Coach.
You throw me off my game. I'm very focused, like laser.
Like, we got to figure out what hypothetically means and go with it. This is a tough one because Carson Wentz, they're projecting to come back for the opening game, but we saw with Andrew Luck that that's not always the way that it goes. And really with Ryan Tannehill, him coming back from injury too soon doesn't go that way. So you got to consider that factor. What he did in the playoffs was incredibly surprising to me, and really, unprecedented in a lot of ways for a backup. We see year in and year out where those backups go in and the team can't do anything, and someone who's projected to win it all can't even compete at that point. So I like that part too. His salary cap number is good. If they do trade him, they'll take about a $4 million cap hit. So that's a consideration. But he is on a one-year deal. And if someone gave you a ridiculous amount of compensation, I think you've got to pull the trigger and move forward. I think as soon as we start talking about number ones or multiple number ones or anything like that, then you've got to take a step back and say, this is in the best interest of the organization long term. If
the offer was flatly a mid-first-round pick, is that enough to make you start having the conversation?
Yes, without a doubt. When Jimmy Garoppolo only merits a second-round pick, then if someone's pushing Nick Foles into the first round, and look, his body of work is very inconsistent. He had a big year, and then he had some off years, and then he got cut or moved on from 2 different places, and then he comes back and has this streak.
Listen, there's only 2 game films, and that is the Minnesota game and the Super Bowl that you're going to put in a tape reel to be able to send to teams to be able to try to sell Nick Foles as being their starting quarterback. You mentioned some things that are very, very important. His salary cap number. So if he was to get traded for, you have to sign him immediately to a contract extension. Now, we saw what the going rate for starting quarterbacks is. So which team is willing to not only give them a first-round pick at least, but also willing to give Nick Foles between $15 to $20 million? Now, as far as Philadelphia saying, hey, there are people calling about Nick Foles, you must approach the Sam Bradford. Let's go back to when Sam was traded and what were the circumstances. Minnesota was desperate, all right? They had to trade a 1 and a 4 to get a starting quarterback because they didn't want to forfeit the season. They felt as if they had a championship caliber team that needed a quarterback. So that's the reason why they were able to get a first and a fourth. And the season was already here. Right now, we're in the offseason. Teams are not desperate, and Nick Foles would warrant a huge contract extension. So I believe that Philadelphia right now is a lot like New England was with Garoppolo. Remember Garoppolo? Oh, it's going to take 2 number ones. Oh, during the season, it just took a lonely little number 2. So I don't believe they're going to be able to fetch, even if that was their asking price. But if you get at least a number 1, you have to look at what's best for the organization, and that would be to move Nick Foles if they were able to get another number 1.
Okay, so this is really interesting to hearing it from you, because when we talked about this right after the Super Bowl, you were pretty adamant that Philadelphia has no reason to move, obviously, Carson Wentz or Nick Foles. That they got a good situation. Nick Foles likes where he is. He appreciates what a talent Carson Wentz is. This is the best place he's been. Is the only thing change has been that at the time it was thinking, would Nick Foles get you a 3rd-round pick or just a 4th-round pick? Is the reason that you're more open to it now because the floated compensation is so high?
Well, let's look at Garoppolo. They end up getting a number 2. That wouldn't be enough for me to move off of my backup. Okay. And also, my franchise player is not going to get on the field for at least 6 months. So with those things that I don't know, I have to keep him there as insurance.
And the other thing that happens is whatever's going on in the most recent past, so Andrew Luck, Ryan Tannehill, 2 quarterbacks, they thought were going to be there for the start of the season. They thought were going to be able to play, and then weren't. As a club, you start to take a step back and say, we don't want to be in that situation.
And look what those teams had to do in desperation. When Indianapolis, they didn't have luck. They had to make a desperate trade with New England for Jacoby Brissett.
Right.
Man, Miami was so desperate, they went and got the Cutler from the TV booth and brought him to Miami. So you don't want to be in that position, Coach.
No, you don't want to be in that position. And right now, optimism is high. You've got free agency coming up, and there's quarterbacks available. You've got the draft coming up, and there's those quarterbacks that are available. When you get to the start of the season or training camp and your guy goes down and you've got a good team, or maybe you're in a make-or-break season for the GM or the head coach, that's when those values start to skyrocket. And if you're the Eagles and Carson Wentz is looking good, you think, okay, now's a good time to move on.
But doesn't the question have to become, you have to look at this guy and say, could Nick Foles be your full season, everyday starter? Can he take you, in 16 games or whatever, what he did in the last, 2 games of last season? I mean, you have to buy into that.
Absolutely. And Chris's point is really important.
I'm not trying to buy that.
It's a question. It's a big question. And you've got to give up draft picks and money. So there's a ton of resources that have to go into this guy. You're getting married with a very big diamond ring.
And I want to make this part clear for the audience
Now I
because
understand.
he's under contract for the next season, $5.5 million. The reason Cris says you'd have to give him a new deal is if you give up a first-round pick for a guy, it's not to have him for one season. Now, if he were on the market for a fifth-round pick, then you wouldn't have to give him the big deal. You could say, okay, we'll try him out for a year. But if you trade a first-rounder, it is because you expect him to be your quarterback long-term.
Minnesota had Bradford under a deal for a couple years. Yep. That's what made it a little more enticing, and the desperation of the season starting.
And they started 5-0 with Bradford. That team was really good until it got further decimated with injuries.
Also, Bradford could be, if they got off Nick Foles, Bradford could be back in Philadelphia as a backup, as a viable option. Him or Case Keenum, who might not be in Minnesota after this quarterback shuffling.
Hey everybody, Nick Wright here, and thank you so much for listening to the First Things First podcast. But I wanted to tell you about another podcast at Fox Sports that we are so excited about, and that is Alexi Lalas's State of the Union podcast. That's right, U.S. soccer legend Alexi Lalas will be partnering up with Fox soccer guru and researcher extraordinaire David Moss to review the top storylines in soccer across the globe. Each week, Alexi will give his State of the Union on American soccer as it rebuilds for the future. Subscribe and listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts right now. Now back to the show.
I mean, if you weren't watching the World Cup before, you're definitely going to watch it now. The countdown is on. We are 100 days away from the 2018 World Cup on Fox and FS1. And who better to celebrate with than our own soccer analyst, Alexi Lalas.
Hello.
Alexi, thanks so much for being with us.
Seeing you. How we doing? Might have to steal that tie from you.
No, look at you.
You already did. You already did.
Pink in the morning.
So, sir, we are 100 days out. What are you in this position most excited about at this point?
There's stuff on and off the field. We just came in with the with the music.
Blood,
it makes your heart. You know, Karel Richter, the Russian composer, who we commissioned to have the official soundtrack, if you will, for the summer. You hear that on Fox, you know that the party has begun when it comes to the World Cup. So that'll be the soundtrack behind it.
Cool.
So that's the off the field stuff. The on the field stuff. What are you talking about? Neymar. We were talking earlier about Neymar, the incredible player for Brazil, Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, all of the big names, and then just the fact that this is the biggest party in the world and everybody's invited, and it's our responsibility on Fox to bring it to the United States, and we're going to do it, as I said, the stories on and off the field in so many different ways. Over 300 hours of content. You know, I got to hit all the points and all that kind of stuff. 38 games on Fox broadcast networks, which is more than the last 4 World Cups combined. So you will see this World Cup. Whether you want to see it or not is up to you, but I'm telling you, it's a party and you want to be there.
All right, with the United States not in, I've decided I'm rooting for Mexico. I have no idea what the reasonable expectations are for Mexico, though. Am I going to be disappointed? Am I going to be excited? What should I expect?
All right, so your team now, Mexico, right?
My
this
team.
is your team.
My team. I've grown up rooting for him. Lifelong fan.
All right, amigo. Here we go. You ready?
8 minutes ago.
Yes.
This is the lowdown on your Mexico team. El Tri, we call them El Tri, right? They are. In my estimation, they are the most underperforming national team in the history of international soccer.
Why did you say that about my team?
I know.
He's throwing shade on his team.
Their history, their talent, they should be better. Mexico should be challenging for World Cups, and they haven't. They haven't been able to get over that hump. Now, your coach, as you know, obviously. Juan Carlos Osorio, the man is a professor. All right? The good and the bad comes with the professor. El Profesor.
Yes.
The man loves to tinker. And he loves to play different rotations of lineups. We'll see if that continues this summer. Look, Mexico, your team, is going to be a huge priority for us this summer because they're our neighbors. We have this incredible connection with the country, with the culture, and with the soccer and the rivalry in the past with the United States. So we'll be all over your team. Don't you worry. You're going to know everything about your Mexico team.
Well, the bad news is for Mexico, Nick's rooting for them.
I know.
The other bad news is they're grouping. I mean, they're in the same group as Germany.
You play Germany in the first game of the World Cup. Welcome to the World Cup.
That's what we want. We want to take on. We want to take these guys on.
You joke, but they do sometimes play up to the opponents. So this could be a good thing for Mexico.
So his expectations for Mexico, for German fans, can they actually repeat in this year's World Cup?
Sure, absolutely. And not only can they repeat, but the depth of quality that Germany has right now, they could probably bring 3 different national teams and compete in the World Cup. Wow. That's how much talent that they have.
I think you'll like what I like about Germany.
What's that?
Man, they're huge.
They don't mess around.
I mean, they got some size. I love seeing their lineup because it's not like a normal soccer lineup. I mean, they got big people.
They don't
in
mess
baseball,
around.
big people work. In football, big people work. The NBA at work. And for Germany in soccer, it really works.
But just because, size doesn't matter, I'm told. So just because you're big doesn't mean that you also can't be beautiful and you can't be romantic.
There's no doubt about it.
There is incredible romance in terms of the way that Germany plays, and there's a precision and a beauty in the way that they all understand what they're doing, despite the incredible size. Not all of them, but this is a team. If you want excitement, you want entertainment, and most importantly, you want success, that's your team, Germany.
Can I talk about one of my favorite players, Lionel Messi?
Yes.
He's like
What's not to love?
He's like the Tom Brady.
About size doesn't matter. There you go.
Well, I didn't say that. I could have said that. That is my history, but I will not say that. He's 30 years old.
Yep.
No sign of slowing down. Tell me how far Argentina
But no World
can
Cup
go.
yet.
But
and
no World
he's
Cup.
Constantly in this incredible shadow of Diego Maradona, who led Argentina to the World Cup.
Obviously, Alexei.
Didn't win the last World Cup. Is this his last World Cup? Where he's at the peak of his powers, probably.
Last
right
World
now.
Cup as arguably the best player in the world, assuredly.
Oh, yeah. He's going to
No
go
question
down
about it.
arguably as the best player in the world. He has incredible talent around him. Unlike Diego Maradona, who kind of took his team on his shoulders, I think that Messi's working with better talent around him, but there's still going to be that pressure. And the argument and the constant evergreen argument about is he the best player ever to play the game, and certainly is he the best Argentinian ever to play the game, is going to be focused, fair or not, on if he has that moment where he raises that trophy, that World Cup
in
trophy.
the biggest tournament, can he win? Now, we've talked about some of the other great players on some great teams. Dark horses. As we've approached this tournament, who should we be looking at for potential
so there's three
upset?
batches. We talked about the batch where if you want to win a little bit of money, you go with the Germanys and the Brazils. You want to win a little bit more money, then you're talking in that second echelon right now. We're talking
Nick,
about
write it
France,
down.
England, Belgium, let's see, Spain, obviously.
Right, yep.
Then there's that other batch, which your Mexico team would be in. And then you want to win a lot of money, you just want to go crazy, then you got your Icelands, your Egypts and stuff like that. And so you were mentioning the U.S. isn't in the World Cup. We all understand that. It's a disappointment. It's sad. But it gives the opportunity for people to gravitate to different teams. And whether it's the players that you like, whether it's the stories surrounding these players and these teams, you will be able to pick your team and follow it through the tournament. So it's going to be a fun summer.
All right, so if you want to pick the team that, unlike Germany, doesn't have big people, but they have very small and very skilled people, and they're the favorites every single year, it's Brazil, right?
Yes.
Like
When I say
they
a
have
stereotype, it's not a bunch of small people running around Brazil.
But no. I don't mean as a country. I mean as the soccer team.
Oh, okay.
Like there's
Not in
soccer.
stature.
No.
Okay.
Neymar is not a physically imposing
Right,
guy.
exactly.
Neymar is obviously the face of their team.
Sure.
He also though has a broken foot. It's
Yes.
an injury you have suffered.
Yes.
So tell us about what the injury is, and should we be able to see Neymar, who's on the short list of best players in the world, in this World Cup?
So we're 100 days out of the World Cup, right? Neymar suffered a fifth metatarsal break, and so they're going to have to go in and put a pin in. You've had this. I've had it. It's a very common injury. It ends up being like a credit card. Eventually, it just wears down and it breaks. You turn. Sometimes it's not even involving contact. Sometimes you just turn and it breaks. So he's going to have that pin put in. Normally, at this point, it's about 3 months recovery. So he still would be back before the World Cup. But just like anything else, it's not just being back physically. It's being back so you're able to deal with it mentally into a huge World Cup. I think he's going to be there. I think he's going to be the same Neymar, and they're going to need him because this is a talisman. This is a guy that is worth the price of admission, even coming off an injury. But it's something to watch, and we'll be all over it.
Who do you like in this? Who are you rooting for? Who do you think has a chance to win this all?
I like Germany, but what's not to like? That's an easy thing to say.
Yes.
England is always interesting because England forever flatters to deceive. And England right now, what scares me is there is this incredible sense of confidence for what's happening with England. That could be a problem going for them. They have a wonderful goal scorer in Harry Kane. Can he lead them to the promised land? Last time England won the World Cup was back in the 60s, back in the previous century. So it's
all
been
right,
a long
I am
time.
rooting for England, guys.
There
it's
you go.
official.
All right, you got your
England.
team.
You've got Mexico.
It sounds like he's a fan of Germany. I'm going with Mexico. All right, listen, America, I know that your guys' podcasts are saturated right now. There's podcasts all over the place. I would recommend listening to them at 1.5 speed if you need to. That way you can squeeze more.
Crank it up.
Crank it up.
Crank it up.
It sounds like this instead of sounding like this. You host a great podcast. It is State of the Union podcast.
State of the Union, every single week.
If you haven't yet subscribed, do it now leading up to the World Cup. Tell us about it.
It's awesome. It will change your life. Not just about soccer, just in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
You will after the 40 minutes or whatever ends up being, you will look at yourself differently. You will look at other people differently.
Wow.
You will look at life differently. That's how changing it is.
That is the mantra of our show.
There we go.
You will look at yourself differently. You will look at life differently.
40 minutes, but 30 minutes if you're listening on 1.5 speed. The way I do. Crank it up.
There we go.
Thanks,
guys. Thanks, guys. 100 days. 100 days.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.